When George Foreman heard that Muhammad Ali's Parkinson's was getting worse, that he might not have much time left, something broke inside him. 20 years of hatred suddenly felt like 20 years of wasted time. Foreman picked up the phone, called Ali, and said the words he'd been unable to say since 1974. "I'm sorry." What happened next became one of the most beautiful reconciliations in sports history. October 30th, 1974. Kinshasa, Zaire. The rumble in the jungle had just ended. George Foreman sat in his dressing room, staring at the floor. His face was swollen. His body was exhausted. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation. He'd lost to Muhammad Ali, the man everyone said was too old, too slow, too far past his prime. The man Foreman was supposed to destroy. Instead, Ali had made him look foolish, had used the rope-a-dope strategy that Foreman still didn't fully understand, had let Foreman punch himself into exhaustion and then knocked him out in the 8th round. But worse than losing was how Ali had promoted the fight. For months leading up to Zaire, Ali had called Foreman a monster, a bully, a mummy, had made Foreman the villain in front of the whole world, and the people of Zaire had believed it, chanted Ali Bamaye, Ali, kill him, treated Foreman like he was evil incarnate. Foreman had never seen himself as a villain. He was just a fighter, a kid from Houston who'd pulled himself out of poverty through boxing. But Ali had painted him as something else, and Foreman couldn't forgive that. After Zaire, Foreman retreated, stopped fighting for a while, avoided the media, and when he did speak, he never mentioned Ali's name. Couldn't, because the rage was too intense. Years passed. Foreman came back to boxing in 1987, after a decade away, started rebuilding his career, became a different kind of fighter, older, heavier, but smarter, and successful. But the Ali grudge never left. At boxing events, if Ali was there, Foreman would leave. If someone mentioned Ali's name, Foreman would change the subject or walk away. The hatred had calcified into something permanent, something Foreman couldn't imagine ever changing. Then in 1994, Foreman heard the news. Ali's Parkinson's disease, which had been diagnosed in 1984, was progressing. Ali's speech was getting worse, his movements more labored, his public appearances less frequent. Foreman was at his home in Houston when he saw a news segment about Allah, saw how the disease had ravaged the man who'd once been the most beautiful athlete in the world, saw Allah's hands shaking uncontrollably, saw the blank expression that Parkinson's created, robbing Allah of his animated, expressive face, and something shifted in Foreman's chest, something uncomfortable, something like guilt, because Foreman realized that while he'd spent 20 years hating Muhammad Ali, Ali had been slowly dying, and one day, probably soon, Ali would be gone, and Foreman would still be carrying this hatred forever. That night, Foreman couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Ali, about Zaire, about the 20 years of anger, and he asked himself a question he'd never asked before. Why? Why was he still so angry? Ali had beaten him in a fight. So what? Foreman had lost other fights, had lost to Jimmy Young, had been knocked down by Ron Lyle. Those losses didn't haunt him. So why did Ali? The honest answer, the one Foreman didn't want to face, was that it wasn't really about the fight. It was about the humiliation, about feeling small, about the world seeing him as the villain, while Ali was the hero. But sitting in his bedroom at 3 a.m., Foreman realized something. Ali hadn't humiliated him. Foreman had humiliated himself by believing the narrative, by playing the villain role, by letting his ego be so fragile that losing a fight felt like losing everything. Ali had just been Ali, promoting a fight, playing the game, being the showman he'd always been. Foreman had taken it personally, when it was never personal. And now, 20 years later, Foreman had wasted all that time hating someone who'd never actually wronged him. The next morning, Foreman told his wife, "I need to call Muhammad." She was surprised. "Muhammad Ali?"
Yeah.
"George, you haven't spoken to him in 20 years. I know, that's the problem. What are you going to say?" I don't know, but I need to say something before it's too late. Foreman got Ali's number through a mutual friend, sat by the phone for an hour working up the courage, then finally dialed. The phone rang. Someone picked up. A woman's voice. Ali's wife, Lonnie.
Hello?
Hi, this is George Foreman. Is Muhammad available? There was a pause. Probably surprise. Then, hold on. Foreman waited. His heart was pounding. He felt like a teenager calling a girl for the first time. Then he heard Ali's voice, slower than it used to be, softer, but unmistakably, Ali. George,
Yeah.
it's me. This is a surprise. I know. I'm sorry I haven't called before. It's okay. There was a pause. Foreman didn't know what to say. How do you apologize for 20 years? Muhammad, I need to tell you something. I've been angry at you for a long time, since Zaire, and I blamed you for a lot of things. For making me look bad, for turning people against me, for humiliating me. Ali didn't respond, just listened. But I was wrong, Foreman continued. You didn't humiliate me. I did that to myself. You were just doing what you always did, promoting a fight, being Ali, and I took it personal when it wasn't personal. I've wasted 20 years being angry at you for something you didn't do, and I'm sorry. The line was quiet for a moment. Then Ali spoke.
George, I'm sorry too.
Foreman was surprised. For what? For hurting you. I didn't think about it at the time. I was just trying to sell tickets, make the fight bigger. But I know I said things that hurt you, called you names, made people see you as a villain, and that wasn't fair. You're not a villain. You never were. Foreman felt something break open in his chest. He'd called to apologize. He wasn't expecting Ali to apologize back. I forgive you, Foreman said. And I hope you forgive me. For wasting all this time. For holding on to anger that didn't serve either of us. I forgive you, George. I've always forgiven you. Even when you were mad at me, I never stopped respecting you. You were a great champion, are a great champion, and I'm glad you called. They talked for another 20 minutes, about boxing, about life, about getting older, about Ali's disease and Foreman's comeback, about their families, and by the end of the call, 20 years of hatred had dissolved. Just like that, because Foreman had finally done what he should have done 2 decades earlier. He'd let it go. After that call, Foreman and Ali started talking regularly. Not constantly, but enough. Checking in, sharing stories, building a friendship that should have existed all along. In 1996, Ali was chosen to light the Olympic torch in Atlanta. The whole world watched as Ali, trembling from Parkinson's, held that torch and lit the cauldron. It was one of the most powerful moments in Olympic history. George Foreman was watching on television, and he cried. Not from sadness, from gratitude. Gratitude that he'd called Ali 2 years earlier. Gratitude that he hadn't waited until it was too late. After the Olympics, Foreman called Ali again. That was beautiful. Muhammad, the torch, the whole thing. Thank you, George. I'm glad I got to see it. Glad I got to know you again before... Foreman's voice trailed off. Before I'm gone? Ali finished. Yeah, I'm glad too. Glad we fixed this. Life's too short to hold grudges, George. I learned that the hard way, with Joe Frazier. We wasted so much time fighting each other, instead of celebrating what we did together. I didn't want that to happen with you too. In the years that followed, Foreman became one of Ali's most vocal supporters, would defend him in interviews, would talk about their reconciliation, would tell anyone who'd listen that Ali was one of the greatest men he'd ever known. In 2003, Foreman published his autobiography. There's a chapter about Ali, about Zaire, about the 20 years of hatred, and about the phone call that changed everything. Foreman wrote, I thought Muhammad Ali had humiliated me, but the truth is, I humiliated myself by holding on to anger, by letting my ego control me, by wasting 20 years that could have been spent as friends. Muhammad didn't just beat me in Zaire. He taught me how to lose with dignity. It just took me 20 years to learn the lesson. When reporters asked Foreman about the reconciliation, He was always honest about his regret. "I wasted 20 years," he'd say. 20 years I could have spent learning from Muhammad, talking to him, being his friend. Instead, I nursed this grudge that served no purpose, made me smaller, not bigger. Muhammad forgave me the moment I asked, but I'm still working on forgiving myself. In 2016, when Muhammad Ali died, George Foreman was devastated, but not with regret, with gratitude, because he'd called in 1994, because they'd had those 22 years of friendship, because he'd gotten to tell Ali he was sorry, while Ali could still understand the words. At Ali's funeral, Foreman was asked to speak. He stood at the podium, looked out at the thousands of people gathered to mourn the greatest, and told the truth. "I hated Muhammad Ali for 20 years. That's not something I'm proud of, but it's the truth. I let my ego and my pain turn into hatred, and I almost died with that hatred still inside me. But in 1994, I heard that Muhammad's health was failing, and I realized I was running out of time, time to apologize, time to let go, time to be the man I should have been all along. So I called him, and I said I was sorry. And you know what Muhammad said? He said he was sorry too, even though he had nothing to apologize for. That's who Muhammad Ali was. A man who could have held my hatred against me, but chose forgiveness instead. The last 22 years of our friendship were a gift I almost threw away because of pride. Muhammad taught me a lot of lessons, in the ring and out of it, but the biggest lesson was this: forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength. And letting go of hatred doesn't make you smaller, it makes you free. I'm grateful I learned that lesson while Muhammad was still here. Grateful I got to tell him I loved him. Grateful I got to be his friend. And I'm telling you now, if there's someone you're holding a grudge against, call them. Today. Don't wait 20 years like I did. Don't waste time on anger that serves no one. Life is too short, and people like Muhammad Ali don't come around often. We should spend the time we have celebrating them, not hating them. The church was silent. Then the applause started, because Foreman had done something rare. He'd admitted his mistake, publicly, completely. And in doing so, he'd honored Ali in the most genuine way possible. After the funeral, a young reporter asked Foreman what he missed most about Ali. Foreman thought for a moment. His forgiveness. Muhammad forgave everyone. Joe Frazier, eventually. Me. People who said terrible things about him. He just forgave, and I wish I'd learned that from him earlier. Wish I'd spent 20 years being like Muhammad, instead of 20 years being angry at him. Do you think he knew how much you regretted the wasted time? Yeah, I told him many times. And every time, he'd say the same thing. "George, we got time now. That's what matters." And he was right. We had 22 good years. That's more than a lot of people get. The reconciliation between George Foreman and Muhammad Ali is one of sport's great redemption stories. Not because Ali needed redemption, but because Foreman found it, found the courage to let go of 20 years of anger, found the strength to admit he was wrong, found the wisdom to forgive himself. And Ali, sick and dying, still had enough grace to meet Foreman halfway, to apologize for his part, to offer friendship when he could have offered nothing. That's the legacy. Not the fights they had, but the friendship they built. Not the rivalry, but the reconciliation. George Foreman is 76 years old now. In interviews, he still talks about Ali, about the phone call, about the wasted years and the redeemed ones. "People ask me about the rumble in the jungle," Foreman says, "about the rope-a-dope, about the 8th round. And yeah, that matters. That's history. But you know what matters more? The phone call in 19... That's when I really lost to Muhammad Ali. Lost my hatred, lost my pride, lost all the stuff that was making me small. And in losing that, I found something bigger. I found a friend. I found forgiveness. I found peace." That's the untold story. Not the knockout in Zaire, but the reconciliation in Houston. Not the fight that made headlines, but the phone call that healed wounds. Muhammad Ali beat George Foreman twice. Once in the ring, once in the heart. The first time took 8 rounds. The second time took 20 years. But both times, Ali won with the same strategy, by being exactly who he was: confident, forgiving, human. And George Foreman learned what Ali had been trying to teach him all along: that holding grudges is the heaviest weight you can carry, and letting them go is the greatest victory.